The first scream didn't come from the storm, it came through my radio. A raw,
Karen's
breaking
gone.
voice. Karen's gone. She walked into the white, she's just gone. I froze on my driveway, the blizzard hammering so hard, it erased the street between heartbeats. The HOA convoy had mocked my warning, laughed at my charts. Now their four-vehicle formation was scattered somewhere past Cutler Ridge engines, dying one by one. Ellis, please, if you're out there, static chewed the rest. I grabbed my rescue sled, stepped into the
Stay in your
whiteout, and
vehicles.
keyed the mic.
I'll find
This is
ya.
Ellis. Stay in your vehicles. I'll find you. But before I
Anyone
could
there?
take 10 steps, another voice came through. A voice that shouldn't have been alive. Before the storm ever formed on the radar, our HOA president, Linda Rowe, had already made herself the weather everyone feared. Linda didn't walk the neighborhood, she patrolled it. Same glossy SUV, same stiff posture, same clipboard that swung like a badge she wished came with handcuffs. Her reputation was simple. If you smiled wrong, she fined you. If you disagreed, she documented you. I once saw her lecture an elderly neighbor for having non-regulation holiday lights in October. Another time, she threatened to tow a family's car because the tires touched the grass by an inch. She didn't enforce rules. She weaponized them. And for reasons she never said out loud, she had a special fixation on me. Maybe it was because I never folded under her tone. Maybe it was because I'd spent 25 years analyzing storms, while she spent 25 years analyzing driveway angles. Or maybe it was the moment she caught me installing reinforced shutters, and I explained calmly that her official weather bulletin was outdated by 6 hours. Her smile dropped completely then. From that day on, every time I offered data, she heard defiance. Every warning I sent felt to her like a challenge to her throne. So when the first blizzard alerts hit, Linda didn't ask what I saw. She asked who I thought I was. I didn't move to Briarwood Ridge to be a hero. I moved there because after 25 years in Air Force weather operations, I wanted a street where the biggest concern was whether the mail showed up before noon. I wanted quiet, a garage big enough for my tools, a yard that didn't need perfect edging, a sky I could study without anyone's life depending on it. But old habits don't die. Every morning, I still pulled up radar loops before my coffee finished brewing. Not paranoia, just muscle memory. I'd seen too many storms turn from probably nothing into aircraft diverting monsters in minutes. My routine was simple: run maintenance on my old radio rig, check local weather stations, split firewood when the temps dropped, and keep an eye on the valley winds that like to curl around our ridge. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of preparation that felt normal after a career spent watching weather try to kill people. Most neighbors barely noticed. A few thought I took storms too seriously. Linda, our HOA president, thought I took everything too seriously. Still, for most of that first winter, things were calm. Kids rode scooters, retirees walked dogs, and the loudest argument on the street was over whose turn it was to host a book club. Peaceful, predictable. Then the signs started stacking up. The barometric pressure dropped like a stone fast enough to make my ears pop indoors. Birds flew lower than streetlight height. The wind shifted into these long, hollow gusts that didn't sound like regular winter weather. The sky turned that bruised purple color I'd only seen above mountain bases minutes before a whiteout rolled in. When I checked the jet stream overlays, my stomach dropped. 2 Arctic branches were teeing up to collide right over our valley. The models weren't showing a storm, they were showing a shutdown. I sent the first warning email. Not dramatic, not alarmist, just data. Expected gusts. Visibility collapse, flooding risks. Recommended closures. Linda shot back a message that looked polite until you read it twice. Please refrain from alarming the community. That was the moment the peace cracked, not because I was right, not because she was wrong, but because I realized something simple and dangerous. She would rather protect her authority than protect her neighbors. And the storm didn't care about authority. The first warning signs weren't from the weather, they were from the HOA. 2 days before the storm, I found a bright orange violation taped to my mailbox. Unauthorized winter modifications. In other words, Linda didn't like that I'd sealed my vent gaps and stacked extra firewood. I shrugged it off until I saw her doing slow laps around my house with her clipboard, pausing to take pictures of everything from my gutter guards to the salt on my walkway. Neighbors walked by, pretending not to notice. Some whispered that I was over-preparing again. Meanwhile, I was watching the radar bloom into colors a storm shouldn't have. I sent another message, short, factual, blunt whiteout risk within 36 hours. Roads will disappear. Prepare accordingly. No reply from the board. Instead, a second violation arrived an hour later. Improper storm barriers. Fine due immediately. It didn't annoy me, it scared me. Because I suddenly understood they weren't ignoring the storm, they were actively discouraging anyone from preparing for it. And storms don't wait for paperwork. The next day, the boundary wasn't just crossed, it was erased. I heard footsteps on gravel and stepped outside to find 2 HOA board members standing in my side yard, uninvited, inspecting my generator, like it violated national security protocols. "You can't have this fuel storage visible," one said, tapping the canister with his pen. "It creates unnecessary alarm." I blinked. "A blizzard is coming. People should be alarmed," he smirked. "Linda says the official advisory doesn't support that conclusion." They walked the perimeter of my property, jotting notes, treating my storm prep like graffiti on a school wall. One even measured the height of my snow stakes as if that mattered more than the fact that the wind was already shifting into long, low moans. When I asked what they were doing, the shorter one said, "Documenting potential violations for safety." Safety? The one word they kept using without understanding. That afternoon, I received 2 new violation notices. My non-compliant shutters and unapproved barriers would generate fines if not corrected. They wanted compliance. The storm wanted victims. And the storm was going to win. I realized we were in real trouble the moment the HOA unveiled their emergency readiness convoy. I heard the engines before I saw them, 4 vehicles lined bumper to bumper outside the clubhouse, floodlights blazing through the first drifting snow. The board stood proudly in matching jackets, handing out branded tote bags, stuffed with flashlights too weak to be useful, and hand warmers that expired last year. Linda spotted me watching from across the street, lifted her chin and announced loudly, "Briarwood shows leadership today. Leadership." She was about to drive straight into the worst part of the storm. Their official route map printed and laminated because of course it took them across Harper Ridge, a narrow wind funnel that turns into a blind corridor once visibility drops below 30 feet. Mine was already reading 10. I jogged over, trying one last time. "Turn around? You'll lose visibility in under an hour. If you hit that ridge when the gusts peak, you're done." Linda smiled like I'd offered weather poetry. "Dan, we have seniors expecting assistance. We won't abandon them because of your pessimistic models." Not pessimism, math. But math doesn't trend well on community Facebook pages. They rolled out anyway, waving as if they were filming a recruitment commercial, and the storm opened its jaws. By early afternoon, the storm had matured into something feral. County dispatch chatter flooded my radio plows, abandoning routes, deputies diverting traffic, EMTs warning they couldn't reach half the northern valley. Every official channel was screaming the same message: stay off the roads. Yet Briarwood's convoy pushed forward like they were immune to physics. I watched from my shutter slit as they vanished into the wall of white, their taillights dissolving faster than I could blink. I tried the HOA emergency channel again. "Convoy, this is Ellis. Respond." Silence. I switched to county frequency. A dispatcher's voice snapped through the static. "All units avoid Crestline and Harper Ridge. 0 visibility. Repeat, do not enter the ridge." My stomach turned cold. That was their exact route. Neighbors stepped outside, confused, watching snow erase familiar streets. A few whispered about the convoy like it was some noble mission, but I knew better. The second the storm sealed behind them, they weren't heroes anymore. They were missing. The first distress call hit like a gunshot. "Ellis, this is Unit 4. Engine stalled, windows frozen, can't see the road, please." Static swallowed the rest. A second voice broke in, breathless and terrified. "We spun out. I think we're sideways. We're not on pavement anymore. Dan, what do we do?" Then a third, shrill with panic. Linda left the SUV. She said she saw a porch light through the snow. She went to look. "Dan, she's been gone 10 minutes. She's gonna freeze." I felt the room tilt. Leaving a vehicle in a ground blizzard is the same as surrendering your life to the wind. I keyed the mic. "Listen to me. Stay inside the trucks. Hazards on. Conserve heat. Do not walk. I can only find you if you stay put." A long, broken crackle. Then a small, trembling voice. "Dan, it's Linda. I can't see anymore. It's just white. Tell me what." The transmission cut mid-sentence. That was it. The moment the situation crossed from dangerous to deadly. I grabbed my cold weather gear, activated my beacon, strapped the rescue sled to my belt, and pushed open the garage door. The whiteout swallowed me whole before the air could warm my breath. The ridge didn't appear so much as times materialize, times a jagged silhouette in my headlamp before the wind erased it again. I followed the faint ping of my beacon, dragging the sled behind me through waist-deep drifts. Every few steps, my radio crackled with someone's panic. Then Linda's voice cut through brittle and shaking. "Ellis, are you out here? Please answer." That was as close to surrender as I'd ever heard from her. "I'm here," I said, "but you have to stop moving. You all do. Stay in the vehicles." A chorus of voices spilled through fear, arguing someone's sobbing, and suddenly it felt less like a rescue and more like an HOA meeting gone feral. Linda tried to reassert control. "We can't just sit," she snapped. "Someone has to." "No," I said, sharper than I intended. "This isn't a board vote. This is physics. And physics doesn't negotiate." Silence. The first silence from her I'd ever earned. Then, a faint metallic thump echoed through the storm, one of the vehicles half buried on its side. I tightened my grip on the sled rope. "Stay on the line," I told them. "I'm seconds away." The storm roared back as if offended I'd spoken over it. The first truck materialized out of the white, like a stranded submarine. Its hazard lights pulsed weakly, one orange eyelid blinking slower than it should. Inside, I found Mark, the HOA treasurer, curled sideways across the seat, eyes glazed, lips white as chalk. His hands shook so violently he couldn't even reach for me. "Dan," he whispered, I thought you were a dream. Unfortunately for you, I'm real." I wrapped him in a thermal blanket and shoved heat packs under his arms. "Stay awake." He nodded, teeth clacking like dice in a cup. The next vehicle was worse. It had spun halfway off the road and smashed into a buried, fallen tree. "I heard the groan before I saw it, Greg," one of the volunteer drivers pinned awkwardly against the seat. His leg was bent at a shape no limb should hold. "Help, please don't let me fall asleep," he murmured. I applied a makeshift splint, tightened a tourniquet, and tried not to think about how long it had taken me to reach him. Then came the gut punch. Tiny footprints, Linda's leading away from the third SUV and into the trees, already filling, already fading. I keyed the mic. "Convoy, I have 3 located." Linda went on foot. "I'm tracking her now." A sharp gasp crackled over the line. "Andrea, Dan, please hurry. She can't survive out there. Neither could they if I failed." I followed the footprints until they vanished into a sculpted drift. For a second, panic clawed at my ribs. Then a faint shape at the base of a pine tree. A collapsed figure, half buried. A red scarf snapped in the wind, like a frayed signal flag. Linda, I dropped to my knees, brushing snow from her face. Her eyelashes were crusted with ice, her breath shallow, uneven. The woman who lectured neighbors about mailbox heights now looked impossibly small. Her voice cracked when she recognized me. You came." "Don't talk," I said. "Save your strength." But Linda shook her head, a small, broken motion. I thought, if I could just get to a house, get reception. I wanted to fix this. "You almost didn't make it 20 feet. A tear formed, froze before it fell. I should have listened to you." I lifted her into my arms. She weighed less than her jacket and carried her back through the whiteout. The wind shoved at me like it wanted her back. By the time I reached the sled, with the others loaded inside, county snowcats were cutting through the storm's searchlights, splitting the white into glittering shards. One deputy jumped out, saw the cluster of half-frozen board members I'd hauled together, and whistled low. "Ellis, you pulled off a miracle. Maybe. Or maybe the storm wasn't done yet." A final gust slammed into us so hard it rattled the sled frame. But this time, we weren't alone. And for the first time since the convoy left, I knew they would live. When the last snowcat cleared the ridge and rolled into Briarwood, the storm had stopped growling and settled into a defeated hiss. Medics rushed the injured into ambulances. Deputies shouted coordinates. Floodlights washed the street in a cold, artificial sunrise. But the strangest part wasn't the chaos. It was the silence from the neighborhood. People stood on their porches in slippers and coats thrown on backwards, staring at the battered convoy of survivors I'd hauled out of the whiteout. No judgment, no gossip. Just shock, the kind that rearranges a community's understanding of someone overnight. I stepped down from the snowcat, legs trembling. A few neighbors moved toward me, hesitated, then stopped like they weren't sure if they were allowed to speak to me yet. The same people who'd once rolled their eyes at my storm shutters were now staring like I was some kind of apparition carved from ice. A deputy clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You saved their lives," he said, voice low, reverent. I didn't feel like a savior. I felt cold, hollow, exhausted. But when I reached my porch and looked back, I saw something I'd never seen before in Briarwood. No one looked away, and that somehow warmed more than the heater humming inside my house. 2 days later, the emergency community meeting filled the middle school gym. Folding chairs scraped the floor, cameras streamed the event online, and the air buzzed with attention no one tried to hide. Linda appeared first on the projector screen from her hospital bed. No makeup, no flawless hair, just a woman who had finally run out of places to hide from the truth. "I failed this community," she began. Her voice trembled but never wavered. I ignored the warnings of someone who knew more than I did. I chose image over safety, and it nearly cost lives. No one interrupted, no one scoffed. People listened maybe for the first time. She held up a signed document. I resign as HOA president effective immediately. Every board member involved in the convoy resigns with me. We have no authority left to ask for your trust. Gasps rippled through the gym, but no one argued. Ted, now technically the lone remaining board officer, stepped forward. We move to dissolve the current HOA structure, he said, and replace it with a resilience council, volunteer-driven, no fines, no citations, real safety, not theatrics. He took a breath. We've asked Dan Ellis to serve as our advisor. When he says prepare, we prepare. Period. No applause, just nods, quiet, unanimous agreement. For once Briarwood wasn't performing unity, it meant it. The days that followed were something I never expected. People knocked on my door not to complain, not to accuse, but to thank. Kids drew pictures of Mr. Dan saving the neighborhood. One neighbor left a thermos of coffee and a note that simply said, "You were right. We should have listened." Then one morning Linda appeared on my porch. She looked smaller, softer, wrapped in a borrowed coat from the hospital. She held out a small flash drive. This is everything she said. Our emails, internal messages, dash cam footage. If the neighborhood wants it, they can have it. I turned the drive over in my hand. Why give it to me? Because you won't use it to hurt people, she whispered. You'll use it to protect them. She stepped back, inhaling shakily. I'm selling my house. I think Briarwood's future works better without me. Before she left, she added, you didn't just save us. You changed us. Maybe. Or maybe the storm did the changing for us. Spring thawed the chaos. Snow melted off roofs in heavy sheets. And on the first Saturday of March, I opened my garage to a dozen volunteers, neighbors, ready to learn radios, first aid, emergency prep. Even the teenagers came. Riley, always early, tugged my sleeve. Captain Dan, if another storm comes, we won't mess up again, right? I smiled. Not if we stay ready. A week later, when the next cold system crept in from the northwest, I brewed coffee, stepped onto my porch, and keyed the radio. Briarwood.net, this is Ellis. Roll call. 24 voices answered instantly. Clear, steady, prepared. For the first time since I'd moved here, I didn't feel like the outsider with too many tools and too much knowledge. I felt like the neighbor everyone finally understood. And as the wind picked up, just a whisper, not a threat, I left the porch light on. Not because I expected another rescue, but because someone out there might still need to know they're not facing the storm alone anymore.